The Witch. It was during the war between the states when two Confederate soldiers were making their way back toward their camp after being out on patrol one cold and rainy night. They were hungry and tired and were crossing the edge of an open field when they saw the lights of a cabin back in the trees at the bottom of a ridge. As they drew closer, they could smell the distinct aroma of ham and beans, and they decided to go and knock on the door and beg some food. It had been such a long time since they'd had a good meal, they just couldn't help themselves. They stepped up to the door and knocked. They heard a shuffling sound inside, and then the door creaked open, and a beautiful woman stood before them, staring out through the screen. "Ma'am," one of the soldiers said, "we don't mean to trouble you, but could you spare us some food?" And the woman nodded and stepped aside for them to enter. She told them to sit in the chairs beside the fire and to make themselves comfortable. She served them up heaping bowls of ham and beans and poured strong cups of coffee from the pot hanging over the fire. "Is your husband off fighting?" one of them asked her, and the woman only shook her head and told them that she'd been widowed for a long time. After the good meal and the coffee, sitting in those comfortable chairs, basked in the warm glow of the fire and lulled by the soft sound of her voice, the two soldiers began to feel sleepy. But the next morning when they awoke, they were startled to find themselves in the bed without a single stitch of clothing between them, beneath warm quilts. Across the room, the woman worked at the fire, making coffee, bacon, and hot grits. She sat with her back to them while they hurriedly put on their uniforms again, both confused as how they could have gone from the chairs to the bed without a single memory of anything. "Breakfast is ready," the woman called, and they went to the fire, waiting as she heaped up their plates and poured the coffee. "Thank you, ma'am," the shorter one said, as the woman stood up slowly and turned away from the fire to hand them their plates. The taller soldier let out a gasp as he looked into the face of the wrinkled old woman. But they ate their meals, exchanging glances as they drank the last of the coffee. They put on their dry socks and pulled on their worn boots and moved toward the door, thanking her for her hospitality. She winked at them and smiled. "You boys come back any old time. It was my pleasure," she exclaimed as they set off down the road. A few days later, remembering the good food and the beautiful young woman who had brought them into her bed that night, the soldiers set out toward the cabin once again for a return visit. They stepped up onto the porch and knocked on the door, and when it opened, the old woman answered again and smiled. "So you come back," she exclaimed as they stepped inside the warm cabin. The aroma of fresh baked biscuits and bacon filled the air. They sat beside the fire again, looking around the room for any signs of the younger woman. Then one of them spoke up. "Ma'am, if we may ask, where is that beautiful young woman who was here? Is she your daughter?" The old woman began to laugh and chuckle to herself, shaking her gray head. "I ain't got no daughter. They's just me here, boys, and I sure would be glad if you'd stay again," she winked. "It sure was a night to remember." Then, as fast as lightning, those soldiers stumbled out the door, racing into the night again, while the old witch called out from behind them, "Why you boys leaving so soon? We's just getting started."